Billy the Kid, President Ford, and Mario Brothers are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is July 14th, 2022. It is the 195th day of the year. You got 170 days left. It is the 28th Thursday in the 29th week and the 24th day of summer. You got 70 days until fall. Today is National Tape Measure Day. Alvin J. Fellows of New Haven, Connecticut made the lives of carpenters, electricians, seamstresses, and countless other tradesmen and craftsmen easier. On July 14th, 1868, Fellows was granted a patent for improvements in tape measures. That created a whole new era of measurement. Enter the retractable tape measures. Interesting story about that. A friend of mine's dad worked on satellites in the early days of NASA and putting satellites up. We're talking like the late 60s and 70s. And they were trying to put antennas on something that after it would come out of the rocket, it would just expand on its own. And they were having all kinds of struggles with it. Someone decided that a tape measure would work perfectly. And as soon as it came out, it would just unravel on its own. So they went down to the local hardware store and got some tape measures. And some of the original satellites, or a few of them, had tape measures for antennas. The first recorded use of a tape measure goes back to the Romans. They used strips of leather with markings on them. Now, before Fellows, there was another type of tape measure. Englishman James Chesterman designed a steel measuring tape, but it was extremely expensive for the time. It was $17 in 1853. That was the equivalent of about $305 today. It was also kind of big and it didn't fit in your pocket or toolbox. All right, let's see what else July 14th has given us. 1771, the foundation is laid for Mission San Antonio in modern-day California by Franciscan friar Junipero Serra. I went to Catholic school and we learned all about the missions and stuff like that. I never knew his name was Junipero. I always thought it was just Father Serra. You know, my head back then, I don't know. Never thought about it, but I imagine his parents just named him Father Serra. I don't know. Junipero. Who knew? 1789, the storming of the Bastille in Paris. This event escalates the widespread discontent into the French Revolution. Bastille Day is still celebrated annually in France. I always got the vibe it serves as a kind of like a warning to whoever's in charge, you know, whatever politicians they have in charge, like this crap can go down again if you don't watch your P's and Q's. 1798, the Sedition Act of 1798 becomes law in the United States, making it a federal crime to write, publish, or utter false or malicious statements about the United States government. This was one of the first tests of freedom of speech. The House passed the Sedition Act, permitting deportation, fine, and imprisonment to anyone deemed a threat or publishing false, scandalous, or malicious writings against the government of the United States. This was an incredibly unpopular move by the government. The people did not like it. I read one thing that said 75% of the American public thought we shouldn't be doing that, and it was a bad law and everything else like that, and 25% weren't really sure. Nobody was really on board with this. Other than the government itself. When it got down to the vote in the Senate, it was voted 44 to 41 in favor of the Senate to pass the bill. Now, the Federalists, who back in the day, in case you don't know, you had different parties besides Republican and Democrat. Federalists were one of them. Well, President John Adams was a Federalist, and he signed it into law. A lot of people attribute this as to why he didn't get reelected. Thomas Jefferson was not a big fan of this, and he became the third president in 1800. Under the incoming Republican administration, the Sedition Act eventually expired on March 3rd, 1801. Yeah, I find that one, kind of hard to believe that they actually passed it, because that completely goes against the First Amendment. I mean, honestly, besides the freedom of speech part, you also in the First Amendment have where you could petition the government for a redress of grievances. So if you can't talk trash about the government in print or verbally, how are you going to do that? You're also allowed to peacefully assemble. How that passed is beyond me. 1853, the opening of the first major U.S. World Fair goes down. Yep, it was the Exhibition of Industry of All Nations in New York City. 1881, American outlaw Billy the Kid is shot and killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett in the Maxwell House at Fort Sumner, New Mexico. He was only 21. 1911, Harry Atwood, an exhibition pilot for the Wright brothers, is greeted by President Taft after he lands his aeroplane on the south lawn of the White House, having flown from Boston. That must have been amazing back then. Probably about as hard to wrap your head around as when we were having a hard time understanding how the internet worked, 30 years ago. God, actually 35 years ago. 1951, Ferrari takes their first Formula One Grand Prix victory at the British Grand Prix in Silverstone. 1960, Jane Goodall arrives in present-day Tanzania to begin her studies of chimpanzees in the wild. Very impressive lady. I've watched her on a couple different things. She's devoted her life to that. You gotta admire someone that just picks up everything and goes someplace like Tanzania to study chimpanzees. 1983, Mario Brothers is released in Japan, beginning the popular Super Mario Brothers franchise. I am still surprised that they've tried movies with Mario Brothers and they've never done well. And it's such a popular thing. I mean, it's a major part of pop culture. Generations have loved Mario Brothers and all the Nintendo characters, but every time they try and make a movie or even a cartoon out of it, it just flops. 2015, NASA New Horizons probe performs the first flyby of Pluto and thus completes the initial survey of the solar system. Movies released on July 14th, 1999, The Blair Witch Project. This was quite an amazing movie because it was made for $60,000 and it grossed nearly $250 million. If you've never seen The Blair Witch Project, you know, it's interesting because they used video cameras, but they incorporated the feel of the video camera into the movie. Video cameras were kind of just going mainstream at the time where everyone had one. So it was feasible for these kids to go in the woods with a video camera because everyone started having them around then. And the movie is kind of weird. These kids go in the woods, some scary stuff happens, and then they disappear. And all they find is the video camera with this footage on it. Pretty scary movie. I don't like scary movies. Born on July 14th, 1913, Gerald Ford. He was the 38th President of the United States who ascended to the position following the resignation of Richard Nixon. He was a member of the Boy Scouts of America, raising to the highest rank of Eagle Scout. He played center and linebacker at the University of Michigan, helping the Wolverines to an undefeated season and national title in 1932 and 1933. He gave a pardon to Nixon for his role in the Watergate scandal. It immediately generated controversy. Many believe that this is why he lost the 1976 election to Jimmy Carter. He was perceived as a klutz to the general public, thanks in part to Chevy Chase's scathing portrayal of him on Saturday Night Live. That's what it says on the website. But Chevy Chase was pretty funny impersonating him back in the day. It just everything he did, he dropped something, tripped over something. It was great. Died on July 14th. 1965, Adlai Stevenson II. He was the Illinois governor, member of the Democratic Party who ran for president in 1952, then again in 1956. He was also the 5th United States ambassador to the United Nations, and he was known for his intellectual demeanor. He's a very smart man. He worked as a lawyer in Illinois after attending Princeton University, where he became managing editor of the Daily Princeton and received a BA degree in literature in 1922. If you ever seen Dr. Strangelove, which is a Peter Sellers movie, George C. Scott's in it, it's a great movie. It's hysterical. But Peter Sellers claimed that his portrayal of President Merkin Muffley in Dr. Strangelove was modeled after Adlai Stevenson. Interesting thing about him, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, he went to the UN and basically stuck it to the Soviet Union. They tried to play games with him and they were arguing back and forth in a big assembly, and Adlai Stevens laid into them. Kind of made him look foolish. His grandfather, Adlai Stevenson I, served as vice president under President Grover Cleveland. In July of 1965, Stevenson traveled to Geneva, Switzerland to attend the annual meeting of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. After the conference, he stopped in London for several days where he visited the Prime Minister of the UK, Harold Wilson. They discussed the situation in Vietnam with British officials, and he was interviewed by CBS News. On the afternoon of July 14th, while walking in London with his romantic partner, Marriott Tree, Stevenson suffered a massive heart attack and died later that day at the age of 65 due to heart failure. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.